pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm going to really thank Lisa DeGraff, Randy Bashwinger. Lisa has been, she really is the person behind the scenes who's done everything here. I've already done it. And Randy, if no one here knows Randy, you've got to know Randy, because he's the highway superintendent in Berne and also the chairman there, and just a wonderful guy. If you're not on his Facebook, be on it, because he keeps it every road up here. He knows what's up. I'd just like to acknowledge some people that we have here this evening. We have our Supreme Court Justice, William McCarthy. And we will have Senator Amador, who had another function, but is coming immediately when that ends. So he'll be here shortly, hopefully. We have some candidates. We also have Assemblyman Chris Tay. We have our supervisor of Berne, Sean Lyons. We have some candidates with us tonight. We have Joe Vitolo, who's running for Congress. Who's running for Assembly. Robert Porter, who's also running for Assembly. He said he would be here, but he is running for Senate, so I'm sure Chris will be here shortly. We have Albany County Legislator Travis Stevens. And we have a past Albany County Legislator with us here tonight, Deb Bush, who... And we have a Westerlo Town Board member, Amy Burnside. So I think that if I've missed anyone, I apologize, and I'm sure that if I missed them, Lisa will probably get you, because anything I've missed, she's got. So I'm just going to have Lisa say thank you. I know that I told her I'm going to have her say just a few words, and then we'll be on with our program.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. Whether you are here to support Marc Molinaro as your candidate for New York's next governor, or you are here just to listen so you can make an informed decision, you've made the right choice. You're also a big part of history tonight, because I don't believe the Hill Towns have ever had the pleasure of hosting a gubernatorial candidate up here. So, thank you. Here, more times than I can count, people say, why do you stay in New York? The truth and the facts are that we do have high taxes. We are overburdened with rules, regulations, policies, and laws. It's not business friendly. We're struggling with an opioid crisis. Our infrastructure is old and in desperate need of repair. We need to take better care of those with mental illness and other disabilities. Meanwhile, we're being restricted in our efforts to protect our family, our home, our property, and protect against a government of tyranny. I'm confident that this is not what our founding fathers had in mind when they wrote life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I really don't think they ever thought that our guns would be restricted and our Second Amendment under such scrutiny. The bottom line and the answer to the question, why do I stay here in New York, is simple. I am a wife, a mother, a grandmother, an American citizen, and a patriot. And I never want to have to say to my children and my grandchildren, I tried, I gave up, it was way too hard. With that purpose in mind, this is why I'll be supporting Marc Molinaro as our next governor for the state of New York. I'm confident he won't give up. I'm confident he will continue to fight to make New York great again. And I'm confident that he will uphold the principles of our founding fathers and the Constitution of the United States of America. Won't you all join me in believing in New York again?
Thank you, Lisa. I got to tell you, Lisa was so instrumental in bringing in the votes for Assemblyman Chris Kay this past, the special election in April. And she brought them in. I mean, she brought in, there were more Democrats enrolled than Republicans, and he took them all, just about. Well, 80%. Anyway. Well, without further ado, I'm going to let our guest speaker run the town hall meeting. I had the privilege of having a double hitter with him today because I was at the announcement of my good friend Daphne Jordan, who was running for Senate, and he had the privilege of introducing her. So I have the privilege of introducing him tonight to all of you, and I'm sure that you'll love what he has to say. Okay.
First, let me thank all of you for organizing this tonight. I'm very grateful. For those of you who maybe came out with an opinion set or yet to make an opinion on this election, thank you for spending some time with me this evening and allowing me to be here with you. I want to recognize the Young Republican Club here at the, am I at a high school? I always forget where I am. I almost forgot which. So I want to recognize Luke and Jake, Grant, Trevor, and Ben. And Trevor was the founder, right? Yeah, you both were. All founding members. How about a nice round of applause? And then Young Republican Club. Thanks. Did I miss somebody?
Senator Amador just walked in.
All right. And if you have any really difficult questions for me, George Amador is here. He'll be happy to answer them. Are you here to answer the tough questions? Or
I'll do it for you.
That's right. There was a time that George and I looked alike, but I've been running for governor for the last...
You see?
I've been running for governor for the last couple of months, so I've actually aged. I want to pivot from the Young Republican Club to talk a little bit about how I got started. I want to talk to you a little bit about why I'm running, and then I want to stop talking and answer some questions, and we'll spend as much time as we can get away with this evening. I too was once a high school student. I graduated from Red Hook High School in the northwest corner of Dutchess County. Thank you, I appreciate that. Who said that? I've never heard anyone hoot for Red Hook. Except Raiders. Go Red Hook! I graduated from Red Hook High School in 1993, and like most kids, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with myself. There are days I still wonder. I started to volunteer in my hometown, the village of Tivoli, New York, 1,300 residents in the northwest corner of Dutchess County. Started to attend board meetings, started to attend and volunteer with our rec committee, and worked at the local deli. My first job ever was shoveling horse manure at the Tivoli Horse Farm, which I have joked will prepare me quite well for my job should I be elected. But I worked the horse farm, I worked the local deli, I got to know a lot of people, started going to village board members, 4 elected trustees and a mayor, and we started to ask them for simple things, like we had this beautiful park we wanted to improve, we wanted the lights turned on at night, we wanted garbage cans to deal with littering, we wanted the drug problem to be addressed, and every time we went to a board meeting, 4 elected board members, they always would say no. No, we can't do that. No, we didn't do that. No, we won't do that. If we put garbage cans in the park, people will throw their garbage in them, one of the board members said. If we turn the lights on the basketball court at night, well, then kids will play basketball. And I thought, well, that's better than drug deals. But nevertheless, and it was at that moment as a kid that I thought if these people could get elected and make decisions that impacted my life, then clearly I could be elected too, because intelligence was not a prerequisite to holding elected office. And in 1994, as an 18-year-old, I was encouraged and ultimately decided to run for the Village Board of Trustees. So good luck to you all. Continue to encourage people. And I offer to you this, and I say this to everybody, not only should you be involved, not only should you have great opinions, but you should also challenge your ideas by listening to people with whom you disagree. We live in a time and a place where, quite frankly, we are just overwhelmed by listening to ourselves and talking to only those with whom we agree. That's not how you solve problems. It's also not how you make your ideas better. And maybe, by the way, if you have a bad idea, it's no way to ever prove that you were wrong. So I encourage you to do that. I ran in 1994. I won a seat on the Village Board of Trustees. My mom and I were the only 2 people in Tivoli who thought I was going to lose. And I served 1 year when the mayor at the time, Ed Neese, had served for 20 years, decided to retire. And like in most small communities, the mayor says to the village board members, any of you interested in running for mayor? So, of course, I ran home and asked my mom if it'd be okay to run for mayor of Tivoli. And in March, it's a true story, and in March of 1995, I ran for and was elected mayor. I served 12 years as mayor of Tivoli, started at 19 years of age. The reason I tell you this is not just to say good things about young people getting involved, nor to remind me that I have a very long history of being young. I tell you this because it's where I learned the value and the importance of public service. When you serve at that level of government, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you have to be honest with everyone. First, a community that small, if you lie to one person, by about an hour and a half later, they'll figure it out because someone else will tell you. But in that level of government, you learn public service. And that when the roof leaks, it leaks on Republicans and Democrats, and we don't have time to debate or argue it, we just fix the roof. And by the way, you're the first point of contact, right? Residents, regardless of where they come from, what party they may have, if they live in your community and you're the village mayor or the town supervisor, they pull you aside and say, I didn't get my Social Security check today. Where do I go? My mom needs her birth certificate. What do I do? Potholes on the street. Snow wasn't plowed. You get everything. And you have really 2 options at that level. You can say to the person, no, that's not my job, call your state senator. No, that's not my job, call your state assemblyman. Or you can say, it's not your responsibility to figure it out, let me help you. I chose that as my path. Let me try to help you. That's where I started, and I recognized then, and I still believe now, that public service is a dignified duty if you try hard to do the right thing. 12 years as a village mayor, 6 years as a county legislator in Dutchess County, where, by the way, I led an effort to reform our response to child abuse and neglect in our county, change the whole system to make it more responsive. As a county legislator, we helped to preserve farms and farming in Dutchess County. I can run the gamut of issues, and I learned a lot at that level of government. In 2006, I was elected to the New York State Assembly, where most good ideas go to die. Sadly, not all of them. Served 6 years in the state assembly, actually served with George. Senator Amador was a member of the assembly at the time. I ended my service in 2012, having been elected Dutchess County 7th County Executive, also, by the way, the youngest, which I like to say, just as a continuation of the theme that I'm very young. No. I wish I was younger. I also tell you that I ended my service in the State Assembly having served as the Assistant Minority Leader. Why is that important? I only tell you this for this reason. That job, the job of that person, is to know every bill that comes to the floor. My job on behalf of the Assembly minority was to read every piece of legislation, the legal memos associated with it, because on any given day, the way Albany works and doesn't work sometimes is the Assembly majority decides we're going to vote on this today, you need to be prepared. So and the reason I say this to you is that I spent a lot of time understanding as much policy as possible so that we were always responsive. And I think as was said earlier today, we didn't always win the votes, but we always made a good argument, right? So fast forward 2012, I was elected Dutchess County's executive. I inherited, when I became county executive, having the county, like most communities, dealing with the Great Recession. I inherited a $40 million budget deficit. Took on, at the time, the county had lost about 25% of its assessed valuation and had seen a bond rating downgrade. Bond ratings like your credit report, we had seen a downgrade prior to my coming to office. And that was at that moment that I realized that it would be safer to stay in the state assembly where you have very limited responsibilities other than to vote yes or no and represent constituents, right? So as county executive, we had to take on a fairly large challenge. We did that. We shrunk the size, scale, and scope of government. We reduced the size of the county's workforce. By the way, laying off 3 human beings, and those are the toughest decisions that I've made as county executive. We eliminated 112 jobs, 3 people. I can tell you those 3 people voted for me when I ran for re-election, just so you know. They were all able to transition to other work, but 112 jobs eliminated to try to shrink the workforce to save money. We looked at big things and little things to create new efficiencies, and when we were done, over the years that I've been, over my first term, we turned that $40 million deficit into a $20 million surplus. We shrunk the size of the county workforce to the smallest in 32 years. We continue to provide high level of services. We consolidated government, and we've been able to produce 4 years now of property tax cuts in Dutchess County. At the same time, I have watched, as you have, the condition of the state of New York continue to get worse and worse. Now I'm going to start where I should end, and that is to tell you that today, the governor has steered this state budget and this state government toward an $18 billion budget deficit. Now understand that. As the economy has grown in other parts of the country, as jobs have been growing in other parts of the country, this administration has not taken control of state spending. We are staring at a multi-billion-dollar deficit that is going to be a great weight on whomever is the next governor of the state of New York, and I'm hopeful it's me because I've done this once before, and meaning that it's time that we confront that challenge. So I have watched, like you have, this state over the last 7 years adrift in what I will admit to you without being terribly rude is a cesspool of corruption. It is. There are people fighting it, certainly in the legislature. I have no problem with that. But the truth of the matter is we have seen 8 years now of a state government and a governor that has produced for us the highest tax burden of any people in America. New Yorkers shoulder the highest burden of taxation of any state in the country. At the same time, because of that burden, we lead the nation in outmigration, meaning more people leave New York to other states than any other state in America. And if it wasn't for immigrant population coming into the city of New York, we would be on the downward spiral in total population. 42 of the upstate counties have all lost population. All lost population. At the same time, with little question, we are the least favorable place to retire. We are the least favorable place to manage and open a business. We are seeing the decline and the struggles of farmers, and on and on and on. Add to that the fact that there is little question that we have perhaps the most corrupted state government in America. 8 of the governor's closest either fundraisers, donors, or associates, I'm not making this up, found guilty of federal corruption charges. And there are ongoing investigations today. And then you look around and you see, if you pay attention to what's going on in New York City, you see a crumbling transit system that isn't working. When you look upstate, you see billions of dollars taken out of your pockets, given to private business that don't create jobs. Whether it's a film studio in Syracuse that nobody occupied and the state had to hand it over to the county for $1, or it's the Buffalo Billion in Western New York where hundreds of millions of dollars spent and jobs not created, it's insulting. And it says to taxpayers that no matter how hard you struggle, no matter how hard you work, they're not going to pay attention. And we've seen it consistently. We have. And so I say to you that after 8 years of this, we don't necessarily need a third term. We just don't. I actually believe in term limits. And one of the things I'll talk to you about is the reform proposal that I put forward. I want the state legislature to vote yes or no on term limits. I want them to vote yes or no on 6 two-year terms for state legislators or 2 4-year terms for statewide office holders. I think it's important. I think it's a way of just making sure that we hold back against those who want to consume power and consume time in state government. Now, the funny thing is the governor actually also said he was for 2 4-year term limits. So unlike him, I'm actually pledging myself to hold myself to those 2 4-year terms. And I promise you this, because I know my granddad would be very upset if I lied. It's 2 4-year terms and it's done. My wife joked, she said, you get to run for governor twice. You get to be elected and then you get to run for re-election and then you're done. So I'll hold myself to that. And even if the state legislature doesn't want to vote for term limits on them, impose it on me. Impose it on state office holders, because I think you should lead by example. And that's, I think, a place to start. Now, let me tell you, and then I'll end, and we'll have some questions. So because I served in local government, I recognize the value of interacting with residents. I don't think you can serve people unless you're among them. And that's not a theater performance where you come in with the flags and the well, I do have one officer here, but you don't come in with the state police. And it's actually having a conversation. I did it as a village mayor almost every day. Every major decision facing our community, we came together and had a conversation. It was something controversial. We wanted to hear people out. Fast forward to county executive, we've held over 100 town hall meetings in the 7 years I've been county executive, because I think it's that important. On major issues like our budget, on minor issues like redesigning our parks, it is that important. So the promise I also make you, other than holding myself to 2 4-year terms, the other promise I make you is that we'll do this again. When I'm elected governor, I want to be around the state of New York having real conversations with real people. I can't guarantee you we're always going to agree. We can't. But what you should expect from somebody who holds office in this government is that they're going to humble themselves, come down to you, and have the conversation, that they're always going to be among the people and really listen to and learn from people. And when you do that, you're not only able to solve problems, because you're bringing people together regardless of differences, but you also have a deeper appreciation for the struggles, the challenges, the issues that face the people you serve. And you can't serve... Go ahead. And you can't serve people unless you're talking to them, and you have every right to ask questions. You have every right to ask questions, and we as elected officials should do our best to answer them. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I have a few basic rules that, if you don't mind playing with, I'd like to try to adhere to them. I'm happy to answer a question. If you don't mind, just raise your hand. I'll point you out. If you could just tell me just your first name. I don't need to know your social security number or where you live. I just like to know who I'm talking to. And then if you don't mind, to the extent we can keep from giving speeches or asking like a rapid fire number of questions, I promise you this, if we get through the first round and we still have time and we want to make another round, I'll come back to you and ask another question. But I like to try to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions. And then the rules to the elected officials are this: you can probably talk to me any day of the week. So unless you want to get up and say how wonderful I am, no, I'm kidding. We're all going to let the residents speak and ask questions and go from there. Does that sound good? If you start shouting at me, there's a dog here. I know you think he's a canine with the sheriff's office. He's actually got him from the SPCA. He's just sitting there. No. And while we are here, I do think that I don't know your name.
Deputy Scosio.
Deputy, what is it?
Scosio.
Scosio, nice Irish name. Thank you. Apparently they get nervous when a statewide candidate. But the deputy deserves, and you gave it a nice acknowledgement, and all those in law enforcement deserve our recognition and appreciation. And anybody here who's either in service or was a member of the armed services, veterans, raise your hand. Have a nice round of applause for them as well. Thank you. Okay. We thank you for your service and recognize that we are not here doing what we're doing. We're not for the... who would like to start? I guessed. Your hand was very fast to go in the air. Yeah.
One of my biggest things...
What's your name? See? You can't even follow rules.
Don't talk to my boss about it.
No, it's not. Don't talk to my wife.
One of my biggest issues with New York State, other than the SAFE Act, is New York being a sanctuary state.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know how you feel about that at this point, and if you get elected, what you're going to do.
So currently, New York State is not a sanctuary state, but there is Cynthia Nixon's proposing it. There are proposals in the state legislatures. I don't support the concept. I don't support the concept because, see, okay, well, so this is, you just broke my rule too. So I promise that I will get to you. The state of New York as a whole. No, we're not talking over each other. So let me finish with him and then I'll get to you. I promise. I absolutely promise. And you can call me Mark. So I do not support the establishment of a statewide sanctuary. I don't think you get to pick and choose the rules that you want to follow. I just don't. That's my belief. Okay? So I wouldn't support that happening statewide. I certainly wouldn't. Okay? Yeah, so yes, sir.
How you doing, sir? My name is Paul Marsters. I'm retired United States Air Force.
Thank you for your service.
I am an oath and Constitution subject matter expert.
Oh.
Before I ask you my actual question, I just need to make sure that you're ready for the question. Have you read the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights with an 8th grade reading level?
I believe so, yes. Well, I've read all of them. I believe I have a 12th grade reading level.
You, as a governor, as a campaign for the governor, you have the chance to end, okay, the most egregious and felonious lies that have destroyed lives in this state, okay? Since 1911, the Sullivan Act and the SAFE Act are not law. The Founding Fathers called them pretended legislation. You have the ability to do away with both of those without repeal, without anything else, because they never existed. The Constitution spells it out, shall not be infringed as the law. And pretended legislation is determined in the Declaration of Independence. You have the ability as a governor, and will you do away with both of them because they've both been lies and they've destroyed lives since 1911?
I don't agree that I have the right to eliminate them with a flick of a pen. I don't agree with that estimation, only in that they have been unrightfully but challenged as to the degree of constitutionality. I agree that the SAFE Act was not a constitutional act. I don't believe that under any measure you could. Let me finish. That you can make that argument. But I don't want a governor who gets to impose his will or in any particular way without legislative action. And so the legislature needs to act. And it should act. Now, what the governor did was egregious and wrong. It was. In the shadow of a horrific tragedy, he forced legislation onto the legislature, said, you're going to vote on it. And you know what he said? And I don't know if you heard the comments, but what he said was, if we don't act now, and the public gets to see this, they will speak out against it, and the legislature will not vote for it. Yes, sir, that's called democracy, and if it's too much work, you may want to find another line of business. So so number one, no legislation should ever, and certainly one of any significance, should ever be forced onto the legislature without public scrutiny. I would never allow the use of a message of necessity this is state language, a message of necessity to force major policy down onto the legislature. And if I have a bad idea, I'm going to come to the public and talk about it first. That's number one. Every effort should be made to restore the rights of law-abiding citizens. Every effort should be made to restore the rights of law-abiding citizens. And to the extent that the governor has the ability to defund components, to work with the legislature to repeal components, and to force a real conversation about why we have violence in our society, then I'm going to do that. I also would like to make sure that we appoint judges who understand and recognize the Constitution, not necessarily legislate from the bench. And I think a few more upstate judges in the appellate division, Court of Appeals, all very necessary. And if somebody is caught up in a violation of the SAFE Act with no other violent or criminal behavior associated with that, I don't think that we should be prosecuting, because it has created criminals out of law-abiding people. Now I have a disease. My disease is held by most politicians. I take a short question and give a long answer, but I do want to say two more things. Number one, I actually work on Market Street in the city of Poughkeepsie. Now, to your point about my reading level,
Sir, I kind of played on what you said.
yeah, thank you. That was good. No, it was fine. I'm okay. You can, believe me, there's a fellow behind the camera back there. You could actually insult me even more, and I'm still friendly, right? He'll tell you. I work on the block on Market Street in the city of Poughkeepsie where New York ratified the Constitution. And on that block in the courthouse, which is no longer standing but is a new courthouse adjacent to my offices, is where the leaders of New York, delegates, colonialists, patriots, came together and argued whether or not New York would adopt the Constitution. Very important. And a gentleman whose name you probably know, he didn't sing and dance, but he is the subject of a Broadway play, Alexander Hamilton, stood on our block and made the argument that the only way the Constitution ought to be ratified in New York is by including a statement of individual freedoms, individual rights, and that if we were to adopt the Constitution here in New York, we should have a Bill of Rights that argues the protection of certain inalienable rights given us by God. That happened on my block. So I take very seriously the concept that the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and all the others within the Bill of Rights, the other 8 within the Bill of Rights, are individual liberties not bestowed on us by government, but inherent and thus protected by the Constitution and government. I take that very seriously, and if you want to have that conversation, you ought to get down off the podium and have a conversation. We have so many politicians who rush to the microphone in the face of a tragedy and want to say what they have to say instead of having a serious conversation about this, which is, we live in a society that is too angry and too violent. And I don't know the root causes. I don't. I know that I pray. I know that my family prays. I know that my family cares deeply about those who are inside my home and who cares deeply about those in my community. I feel like we have forgotten a lot of that. That we're trapped on our handheld devices, talking only to ourselves, and getting more and more angry and violent. And at the same time, we have in particular young people, but it's affecting everyone, but we have in particular young people who are overwhelmed by, I don't know if it's trauma, I don't know if it's violence in their lives, I don't know if it's just external impacts, and they feel the way to respond to that is acting out in a violent way. So in my county, and this is what I believe in, and this isn't a question then of dealing with one's constitutional rights. I want to get to the root cause of the problem. And in my county, what we do is this. In all of our schools, all the school districts who want them, we have school resource officers. Those officers are not there to be simply security, and they're all trained in crisis intervention training and mental health first aid. Why? Because a teacher should be focused on teaching, and these men and women should be focused on creating the environment that is safe. And where are most of our people? 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, in all of our small communities. Where are they? They're kids in school buildings. So if you walked into a football stadium, or you walked into the shopping mall, or you go to school, you want an assurance that you're safe. And that by giving officers in my districts, in my community, CIT and mental health first aid, they're able to identify kids who are struggling and get the help that they need while providing security and safety. The other we do, the other thing that we've done by choice is expand massively Dutchess County's response to opioid, heroin, and drug addiction and mental health issues. Because there are so many who are struggling with challenges and some demons that we don't want to talk about. And we have to. We have to stop making people feel that the only outlet they have is addiction. And if they have addiction, we need to stop making them feel that they're lesser human beings. They are not. They're struggling with the disease. And that those who feel like acting out in a violent way, either against others or themselves, cannot be left to feel ashamed. So we have a mobile intervention team. We've expanded mental health services. We have a helpline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have a recovery center that allows you to walk through the door. And we have trained every law enforcement official on the street and all of our emergency responders with mental health first aid and crisis training. Why? Because when somebody's looking for help, I need to make sure the helpers are there and able to respond and react in the right way, right? And with that, we're educating our citizens about the value of being helpers. Fred Rogers, anybody remember Fred Rogers? I like Mr. Rogers. He's not running for governor, I'm just saying. I'll finish.
I think he tells a story about in a crisis, he got scared, his mother would say, look for the helpers. So I offer to you that as a society, these are not the only helpers. We are. And we have got to stop sitting on the sideline expecting someone else to confront the problems and challenges that our family members face. So if you have a loved one who's dealing with addiction, it is not acceptable to simply ignore it. It's a challenge. It's a burden. But we have to be given the tools and the encouragement to reach out to them. If you know someone living with a mental health disorder or some mental health illness, we have to stop shaming them and deal with the stigma and reach out and provide help. The state of New York needs to do more of that, to create the relationships necessary to prevent crime, to prevent violence, to prevent the kind of tragedy that certain people want to take advantage of for political benefit. I am not one of them, okay? I've given you about the longest answer to the shortest question ever. Let me come back to you.
The point that I was trying to make is that the crimes of Tammany Hall and the crimes of Cuomo, okay, nowhere in the Constitution does it authorize a politician to violate the Constitution in voting, okay? So every single vote in Tammany Hall in 1911 and in Albany, okay, that violates the Constitution is null and void. So every single vote for the SAFE Act was null and void as soon as it was cast. So that means that there were no pro votes for the SAFE Act. For the SAFE Act. All the names were actually in concert with their oath.
So I've heard you. I've offered you my opinion on that. Right. I accept what you're saying. We have a legislature, and I intend to honor the roles and responsibilities of each branch of government. Okay, but if I'm governor and they violate the law, then I'll certainly have something to say. Okay? Yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. Right.
Yeah, my name is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
I'm local. How you doing?
Good.
My shirt probably says it all.
You're a grumpy veteran with anger issues?
Offensive language is like. I just want to make a comment first. Before
we're all breaking the rules.
I hope the whole night is not about the SAFE Act, but it's important.
Yeah, I understand.
But I have one thing to say. The lamest reason of Republicans that ever did on the SAFE Act, because my picture was on the cover of the paper the next day at the gun rally, was that Republicans said they didn't have time to read it. That was the lamest excuse I've heard from a politician in my life. That was on the SAFE Act. If you didn't have time to read it and you signed it, you needed to resign the next day. That's over. I'm retired from New York State.
Okay. Where did you work?
I'm a fingerprint expert. New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services.
Yes, sir.
I'm a fingerprint expert. I ran fingerprint operations on a daily basis.
Right.
If you keep up with the news now, it's in the limelight where the governor's appointees, commissioners, and deputy commissioners are all going through court cases now. Women have reported sexual harassment, abuse. There was a deputy commissioner that was disparaging people out in public, everything.
Yeah.
And what it's come down to, if you read the paper now, is that this deputy commissioner, who by the way was another governor appointee, where I'm going with you in a minute here, is that they come into office and then they turn around, they're the abusers. That investigation that was supposed to be launched, the state attorney general released confidential transcripts from these women's complaints, took all that information, handed it over to the Deputy of Criminal Justice, Mr. Michael Green, and then he turned around and retributed, demoted these people, put them in lower offices that did that. So my whole thing now is that this Gestrin, the deputy commissioner, who was a governor appointee, he's suing now because of all the stuff that he did wrong. He's suing the state because he's now no longer employable. Wow. So with governor appointees,
why don't
you are going to have if you win election,
If.
if you win election, you are going to have to appoint people to run this agency, people to
You're
run
right.
this agency. Are you going to pick people not based on they got a PhD out somewhere, but somebody in with the agency that actually knows the business, is what I'm asking.
Okay.
And limit the appointees.
Yes, yes. I will appoint the best and brightest, irregardless of party or connection, as I have done as a county executive. Behind my desk is a sign is a quote by Teddy Roosevelt that goes something like this: "The best executives hire the very best and then stay out of their way." And what you described, and I hate to say this entirely, but what you described is accurate. Except I think it was the Inspector General whose report became public. But these are individuals who took advantage of women. They're appointees. Under the law, investigation occurs. The Inspector General conducts that investigation. The Inspector General is required, as I understand it, I'll be careful, by the law to present that to the governor's office. In fact, it is by law required to be handed to the governor. The women that came forward, by the way, these are not the women who were abused themselves, but they testified in front of the Inspector General. I mean, they're legally obligated to tell the truth. They spoke up. They told what they saw. And that these two women, in particular, the ones that have been reported on, one was dismissed and one was demoted and is now working in a hall closet. I don't think that you can say on one hand that you believe that that perpetrators need to be prosecuted and there needs to be strict adherence, and then not actually do it in your own administration. So, two things that I will do. Number one, I will ask the state legislature to adopt a universal code of ethics. Universal. Every agency, every division, every department of state government, and I'll say this carefully, to the extent we have the ability to assign that even to local governments, a universal code of ethics that includes sexual harassment, period. And with that, the creation of a truly independent oversight committee, not one that's owned by the legislature or the executive, but a truly independent ethics commission that enforces the law and stay out of their way. And the second thing that we will do is what I've done in Dutchess County is to adopt a policy that we call Start by Believing. It's actually a national program, which basically says, listen, we never truly know the whole story, but we will start by believing the victim and let truth be found. We don't hide away people who are violators. We don't move them so that that you don't find about it. We don't cover up. We start by believing the victim, which could be a man or woman in any situation. We start by believing the victim. You use the independent ethics review to investigate, to get us the truth, and if somebody violated the rights of another person, they will be fired. Period. Thanks.
My name is Elma, and this has a question that's come from this constituent email this morning.
Oh, are they in the hallway?
They're working, so they couldn't be
It's
here.
quite all right.
For the future of our children, this has to do with the fact that there's so many more divorces and families that are split. National Parent Organization has rated, well, they ranked, apparently there were several studies shown, New York failed for split parenting for the kids. So New York got an F on this
okay.
report. I'm sorry, I get emotional, it's a very emotional thing.
I understand.
With that, would you be, if you are elected, would you be in support of split parenting and shared parenting, not split, shared parenting? Will you support the changes for family law reform to benefit our children, and do you have an open door policy for these people to tell their story?
I don't know the legislation, so I don't want to be in a position of saying yes or no. I will also be very candid. I'm the child of divorce, and I'm a divorced father. I remarried several years ago. Things in life do happen. I will say that we both parent my children. I have three currently, two from my first marriage, Abigail and Jack. Eli is with my wife Corinne, who's also expecting now our fourth child, because we like to go big or go home. But I will. What I will say is, I recognize in this state that family law often does not necessarily result in the best interest of the children. And I think at the end of the day, and again, I don't know the proposal you're talking about, at the end of the day, we should all be focused on the best interest of the child. In certain situations, that's the preservation of family. In certain situations, that's the protection of the child. That's what I did as county legislator. We reworked our response to child abuse and neglect because we wanted to be certain that the interest of the child was principal. Now, to the second question, I can answer that easy. Yes, I actually believe in open and having anybody who has a valid opinion, if it's honest and earnest. If you want to come to my office and shout, you're welcome to do that, but I would prefer to have a real conversation, so the door will always be open, just as it is now. And actually, I say both literally and figuratively. When I took over as county executive, and there's nothing disparaging about my predecessor, the office door was actually closed. I mean, it was actually closed. And so you couldn't get in unless you buzzed a button. We took down the door, we put in a piece of glass, and we leave it now open. Just that in of itself means, we want people to feel comfortable. I don't think that you can serve anybody if you don't give them an opportunity to be heard. But that also means that I'm going to listen to people you might disagree with too. Not to change my mind, but to strengthen our position, to build the relationships. It means that every citizen of the state of New York, through whatever means possible, has every right to be heard by their elected officials, and I will provide, to the extent humanly possible, I will provide that to anyone who wishes to have their opinion and their ideas heard. Okay. I'm going to go here and then there. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yes?
Hi, my name is Austin. I am a student at the University of Albany.
Okay.
So for the past 10 years, tuition has doubled at SUNY and CUNY. Meanwhile, state funding has remained mostly flat. Infrastructure is crumbling. Our rankings academically nationwide have fallen. As governor, you would present an executive budget proposal for both SUNY and CUNY funding. You would appoint members to both boards of trustees. What are your ideas to improve both systems?
Okay, good. Thank you for the question. First, as I opened with, we are spiraling towards a fairly significant budget deficit. And so for me, what that means is we were going to have to look at every line in every budget and every agency to determine what is and is not valid. I don't actually, and I say this is not to your question, I don't believe in mandating things, I believe in outcomes. So what I mean by that is through zero-based budgeting, I want everyone to justify every dollar. So if you're some random agency in state government and you're spending $500,000 on something and you can't prove to me we're getting that something, then I don't want to spend on it. So we start by there. We're going to have to rein in the size, scale, and scope of state government to make it affordable. We have got to live within our means. If we don't do that, If we don't do that, we'll be stealing from future generations. That has to happen now. So start there. So everything gets scrutinized, in my opinion. So to the extent there's waste, fraud, and abuse that exists in the system, we've got to wring it out to create efficiency so that we can provide both relief to taxpayers and make sure that resources are being appropriated. I believe in the funding of secondary education. I believe, by the way, first, public education, K-12, needs to ensure that we're producing outcomes, not producing people who can take tests. It's not something that I believe in. So, and that means saying to teachers, go out and inspire people to learn, to think. That's what I want. My best teachers were the ones that figuratively slapped me around and said, you've got to get your act together, or the ones that inspired me. Steve Sutton inspired me into public service. He said, you love the news, you love politics, why don't you go out and do that? I'll never forget him. Mrs. Badami, my third grade teacher, she said, you're not doing your homework, and if you don't, you're in trouble. So those are the teachers so I want public education, K-12, throughout the state of New York to be focused on outcomes. And those should, by the way, include vocational training. It should include business investment. Why not create partnerships with local businesses to create kids and students who can find what they love, learn about it, be prepared for it. And if you want to go out and be a mechanic, I want you to be the most successful mechanic you can be. If you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or anything else, I want you to be able to do that. Public education in the state of New York should take a lead from the community and the local district and the families and the teachers in those districts and create a curriculum and outcomes that focus on the jobs we have and the jobs we need. Number one. Number two, secondary education, a clear path to get into community colleges first. I value that because it is sort of that soft landing that some people need just to get to that next degree. And the state of New York has done a fairly poor job in keeping up in those costs. So the cost of community college continues to shift to local property taxpayers, the counties that support them, and tuition. And that's problematic. SUNY as an institution, again, I believe in making smart investments. So where we have deteriorating infrastructure, we need to determine, is this a school that one is producing the outcomes we want, is definitely something that fits within the system, and if it needs the resources, we have to make them available. So that means refocusing priorities. Instead of giving $4 billion to some private business, right, without return, we should be investing in education. We should be investing in infrastructure. That's what I agree with, and holding the line on tuition so that those who don't have an alternative don't have to assume huge amounts of cost to enter into the private world or finish even SUNY with huge amounts of debt. That's what I want us to focus on. And lastly, SUNY should be producing students again, just like K-12, should be producing students for the jobs we have and the jobs we want. So create the innovative, if you will, network around those SUNY campuses. Upstate New York, and I get this statistic wrong, has something like the highest per capita number of college students of any place in the country. Okay, so whether or not I'm exactly right, there's a lot of college kids, and a lot of them graduate from SUNY schools and then go to someplace else for a job. I want to create the private sector partnerships with the SUNY schools in those SUNY communities, and with that, by the way, you build communities. You build investment where we have the cultural and the healthcare and the educational opportunities, and you create these innovation zones, if you will. The greatest example of it is Israel. They do an amazing job. I was there last October. Amazing job where they connect small startup inventors, so the gig economy, with their school system, with larger employers, and they create every day a new opportunity. And around that school, they create investment, and it all happens organically. It all happens because people are given the support that they need to really gin up the innovation. It doesn't take. You're not going to create jobs and opportunity by stealing money from hardworking taxpayers and giving it to some business who may or may not have contributed to your political campaign. That's not economic development. It's money laundering. So, long answer, short question, but we want to get the outcomes. So it's not just making the investment and spending the money, it's making sure we get the outcomes we demand and deserve so that you graduate and stay here and plant it. What are you studying?
Political science.
Oh, great, another politician. Yeah. So you make the investment here. I said there was a gentleman there, right? Sir, and then here, and then I'll get to you. Yes, sir, right? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Kevin.
Kevin?
Given what's been going on across the nation, currently in Massachusetts with the legalization of marijuana,
yeah.
How do you feel about legislation here in New York legalizing marijuana?
In a recreational fashion?
Probably, because that's what they all want, but at least for the medical. I personally had a brother-in-law who suffered through cancer, and it did help him at the chemotherapy.
I absolutely believe in expanding access to marijuana for medical use. I support that, and the state of New York has done an awful job. I mean, people have to hospital shop, and doctors have to jump through hoops in order to be able to prescribe. I believe in that. I am not ready to embrace total recreational use. I do believe in that's okay. There are medical issues that can be addressed, should be addressed, and we should have the ability through monitoring to be able to prove whether or not marijuana can be useful with those ailments. And I like those decisions to be made by doctors with their patients, not by me. Right? That's number one. I'll say as an aside, and I know I'm being recorded, but I have a daughter who has a seizure disorder. She would not benefit, we don't believe, but there are those who do live with seizure disorders that easier access to medical marijuana or medical grade marijuana would be of great benefit to them. So I like those decisions being made by doctors. I'm not ready to embrace total legalization, if you will. I don't want people in jail because of marijuana possession. I don't think it's appropriate. Our jails are already filled with enough people who deserve support and assistance. There are other states that have legalized decriminalized, they're going through the machinations of that. I don't think we've answered enough questions to prove what exactly we're going to do about it. So broader access to medical use, broader access for medical purposes, I absolutely agree with. And I'm really willing to allow the legislature and the public to have a much more larger debate on other uses for marijuana. I just would tell you that I think we need to answer some questions before we rush to imposing a change in law. There are a lot of questions that need to be asked and answered, okay? Ma'am. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go over there. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for being here today.
You're-
And I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh, that hasn't happened already?
Going back to your opening statement about our government in New York State embarrassingly being a cesspool of corruption.
Yes.
I think we can all agree that there have been many people that have been under charges for federal corruption charges. And two of those people were part of the three men in the room. So the three men in the room, as you knew, was Sheldon Silver, Dean Skelos, and Andrew Cuomo. Since then, the decommissioning of the Moreland Commission, we find that Sheldon Silver and Dean Skelos went to jail. And they had testimonies.
Not yet, but they're going to.
Well, they had testimonies.
Both were found guilty, and both are going to be sentenced. Yes. Yeah, they've not.
Testimonies led to Governor Cuomo. Then shortly thereafter, he had campaign manager Joe Prococo, then the SUNY Polytech Institute president, then Senator Michael Grimm, then Senator Tom Levis, then Senator John Sampson, and then Assemblyman William Scarborough. And just recently, which affects us here locally, if you don't know, the Bronfman sisters, they were the Seagram 7 sisters, live here in the town of Knox. They were just indicted for the Nexium situation. Now, when the reason that involves Andrew Cuomo is that they have funded his war chest. The Bronfman sisters, Seagram 7, were the ones that used their millions of dollars of fortune and funded Nexium. Nexium was a problem all the way back in 2003 when Andrew Cuomo was Attorney General. And he was asked to investigate that organization. Since then, they have been found as a sex cult. They have harmed multiple children. They're being indicted for child sex trafficking. These sisters were involved in all kinds of money laundering. They're involved with Hillary Clinton's foundations. And they have all funded Andrew Cuomo, when he was Attorney General, refused to investigate these sisters for what they were doing with Nexium because they funded his campaigns all the way back to 2003. Now that's how far back the corruption in New York State goes.
Oh, it's gone back to the 1800s.
Prior to that, he was the commissioner. He was the Clinton organization, the Clinton political arena that took care of the HUD housing scandal.
All right, so you're going to put me on the spot, so let's get...
Now you're on the spot.
Yes.
So now that we know all of these indictments have come out and all testimonies lead to Cuomo, I want to know, as you head of the Republican ticket, are you, this is our one chance and an opportunity, it only comes for you. Because if you don't win, Cuomo will never be indicted. I want to know if you, as the head of the Republican ticket, will put forth to the Republican Party that we need to request that Cuomo be investigated and that he be indicted and eventually start paying for the crimes he's committed to this state.
I have already... No. Do you want to say? Yeah. Do you want to?
I don't want to answer the question, but I will answer the question. Yeah, but
you want to say something? Okay. George has to leave, and he probably wants to say something nice about me, which is a good opportunity to take a break. Briefly, I have already asked for a federal and state investigation of the crimes associated with this administration. I have. I am not a federal prosecutor, and I am not a lawyer. But I believe that wherever the crime or the corruption is, it needs to be rooted out, and whoever's responsible for it needs to be brought to justice, no questions asked, which is why I will on day one, on January 1st, after I take that oath of office, convene a Moreland Commission. This is the Independent Ethics Commission. I will ask for it to do its job, and I will stay out of its way. And if it goes after Republicans or Democrats, wherever it is, it needs to be rooted out, no questions asked, period. That's my commitment. Yeah. Right.
So I'm not trying to interrupt.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
As he interrupts, he's not trying.
I do have to go because I got another engagement that I got to go speak at. But I really appreciate Marc Molinaro coming up to the Hilltown. And it's an honor for me to serve all of you here in the Hilltowns.
Thank you.
So I just want you to know, as your representative, this guy is the real deal. I've served with him. I've served with him for, 5 years or so.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're in the minority in the assembly and you're fighting against Sheldon Silver, you got to have the guts to stand up against Sheldon Silver. He has, I have, and we all know that Sheldon Silver was the biggest crook in all of Albany, right? So I appreciate,
Maybe the second biggest.
I appreciate Marc coming here and exposing his heart. Because I need a partner in Albany. I need a partner. So this is the guy that we need to send to the second floor as governor, because he will stand up. He will call for the investigation. He will rid out you want to talk about ethics reform? I mean, it's no question. We have plenty of laws already. It's just a matter of following through. And this is a gentleman who's got a track record of following through. So I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, George.
Wow. What an introduction. Got a question for you, Scotty, from Westerlo.
Okay.
How, when you become governor, will you address the welfare problems in Albany and New York City?
Yeah. So when you're referring to Medicaid.
I'm referring to Medicaid and to abuse that.
Yeah. I have the same philosophy. First, I want to tell you that as a child, I did benefit from food stamps. My mom was single for a number of years. Did I tell you the joke already that she has three? I probably didn't. She has 3 wonderful children. 2 are exceptionally successful, and the 3rd's running for governor. My mom struggled for a little while. She dealt with her own challenges. There were times that I can tell you that I knew firsthand that she would whisper on the phone to the electric company trying to keep the electric on while she waited for another working mom to pay her for babysitting their kids, and I lived that. She'll also tell you, and she's wrong, that I raised myself. That because of those challenges, I kind of grew up really fast. She raised me, and I'm blessed to have a mom who really instilled in us an understanding that help was real help. We wouldn't take that for granted, and then we'd have to work hard. I also want you to know that, as I mentioned regarding my daughter, she benefits from Medicaid welfare, Medicaid services now, because in the state of New York, well, of course the country, special occupational therapy, speech therapy, what have you, for those living with disabilities, Medicaid is the mechanism to provide those services. So I start by telling you that I want those who are most vulnerable and most in need to get the help that they need. And the system in New York is dehumanizing. It's just dehumanizing. I'm a fairly intelligent human being, hopefully past 8th grade, applying for and navigating to access Medicaid support is complicated. You have to really, and you're always arguing against a bureaucracy. There are people who work in the system who would love to be more helpful, but they are handcuffed because of the regulation. So I start from the perspective that if we're going to have social services, we're going to have Medicaid, and we're going to have welfare, which I believe is necessary to help those most vulnerable. It has to actually help them. And so I start from, again, not mandating something, but seeing the outcome. What are we trying to achieve? So number one, I want the system to be effective and efficient. And number two, and we estimated this when I was in the state assembly, you could argue anywhere between 10 and 30% of the social service system, Medicaid, is waste, fraud, or abuse. And that just has to be rooted out. It just has to be rooted out. And to the extent that we can get in under every dollar, every dime, and every donut, if you will, we're going to unearth it. We're going to identify the corruption. We're going to identify the waste. We're going to identify the fraud, and we're going to stop it. And if you want to take advantage of the poor, and if you want to take advantage of the system, and you're the physician, you'll lose your license. If you're the provider, you'll lose the ability to provide services, you'll go to jail. And if you're a beneficiary, you'll be expected to follow the rules too. So we'll root it out. But I start from a place of, I start from a place of compassion. I want people who are struggling the hardest, those living with disabilities, to get the help and the support they need. But I want a system that doesn't rob from people either. And we need to confront that. And that's where a lot of the savings, I think, will come in the state budget. And it's because, again, I have this problem. I'm going to go one step further and tell you that the state of New York spends an enormous amount on Medicaid as it relates to the other counties and taxpayers across the country. So what New York does, unlike any other state in America, is forces more of its state spending down onto local property taxpayers. So understand what I just said. The state of New York forces more of its spending, including Medicaid, down onto local governments who then charge you property taxes. In my county, those mandates do represent 70% of the county tax levy. That number is higher in some places and lower in others. But again, so that we call those mandates. Again, I don't believe in mandates, I believe in outcomes. Don't tell somebody what they're to do, tell somebody what we want them to achieve and have them figure out how to get there most effectively. That said, because the state forces so much money down onto property taxpayers, our property taxes are so high. The governor wants you to believe that it's his fault. The town supervisor or the village mayor or the county executive, that somehow we're the reason that property taxes are high. Yes, we should share services. Yes, we should consolidate. Yes, we should identify efficiencies. We should rethink the way we deliver services every day. But the reason property taxes are so high in New York is because of New York. And in order to drive down property taxes, you've got to drive down state-imposed spending. I will do that. I know how to do it. I've done it every day as a local elected official. I fought for it when I was a member of the state assembly. I know how to do that. And I'm telling you right now, one of the things, so I started term limits, property tax relief. You want to ask me what I believe in? Significant, sustained, meaningful property tax relief so that people are not chased out of their homes or their businesses or their farms. And the way to do that is by saving money at the state level and stop forcing spending down onto local governments. No new mandates. You want to come up with a new idea? You got to get rid of two. Every dollar that you save has to go back to the taxpayers, not into the government's pocket. And it's not about... And it is not about cutting services. It's about making sure the services we provide are effective and getting the outcomes we want and need. And people who survive on that help are getting the help that they deserve, not merely passing the cost and raising taxes to pay for it. I mean, honestly. And that's what I want us to focus on. Okay? Yes, sir. Right there. And then here.
Mark, a lot of what you're saying is certainly what we need in the state of New York. How are you going to convince downstate New York, which is really the crux of the problem, that they should vote for you? When Andrew Cuomo has gone down to Puerto Rico, I think this is the 5th visit, to garner the New York City Hispanic vote. How are you going to overcome that? You have to be able to do that in order for us up here to give you our support.
Well, first of all, every vote matters to me, whether it's upstate or downstate. I say that. The other is, I never speak of people like there's some one block. I don't know his traveling to any place buys votes. I think voters are smarter than that. And after 8 years of seeing what we've gotten, I think that a lot of voters know that 4 more is not going to change much of anything. I mean, as my wife would joke, after 8 years of knowing me, she knows what she's gotten. This is it. And she's still here. I know what we've gotten. We have a state government that spends more than it should. We have a state government that taxes more than it should. We have a state government that's more corrupt than it should be. And we have a state government that doesn't focus on the real needs of real people. 8 years is enough. How do you convince New York City? Well, the same way you convince anybody, but the New York City residents are standing on subway platforms that don't work. They're flooded. They have subway cars that are derailed. They know that this governor has allowed for the total deterioration of their lifeblood, their transit system. Now, what that means to you, that may mean nothing. But in a city of that size, in America, New York City should have the best transit system in the world. Instead, it has this horrific experience, seasons upon seasons of, as he would put it, hell. And when asked about why it's not fixed, 2 weeks ago he said, because the taxpayers. He blamed the taxpayers. I mean, come on. First of all, I have never, ever blamed anybody for my failures. I blame myself and try to fix them. It would be nice if the man just acknowledged that he has failed and committed to fixing it. But the people of the city of New York know it. They've seen it. They have homeless in shelters, men and women dealing with mental illness. They know that Albany and the governor didn't provide the services while he's busy putting state police officers in New York City, when they have a perfectly capable, brave men and women in their police department, instead of focusing on providing the mental health and addiction services that for those individuals living in homeless shelters. People in New York City know that. They've seen it. They've got kids and families living in subsidized housing, and I'll tell you, we have it all across the state, but they see it there, where their families are living where lead paint is still on the walls and the pipes are filled with water that's tainted. That's the state's job. The state runs the health department. It's the state's job to ensure that people are living safe. They get that. And so the more and more that they start to pay attention to the fact, pay attention who's responsible for those things, we'll get enough votes. We'll get enough votes because at the end of the day, they understand. Every voter in this state understands that we can't keep doing the same things expecting a different outcome. But I'll say this to this group here, I need to be a reasonable alternative, and I am, which is why I'll be very honest with you. I do not believe in shoving my ideology down the throats of anybody. Actually, his father, Mario Cuomo, had something to say about that. It was something like, be careful. If you shove your ideology down their throats, they're likely to shove their ideology down your throat. My job as a governor is to take an oath to uphold and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and to ensure that state government provides adequate services for those who need it, without judgment. I don't get to pick the people I want to serve. It's everybody. So I will say to the people of the city, as I will say to you, what your needs are my needs. What your problems are my problems. What your challenges are my challenges. And we've got to stop talking past each other and start solving those problems. That's what we'll do in the city. And they get it. They get it. Okay. Yes. The assemblyman has to leave. I'm just going to move in. I'm going to stay here. I'll be here in September. What time is it?
I just want to say something about this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, a vote other than for Marc Molinaro on Election Day is a vote for Cuomo. Please remember that. We've had the opportunity a couple times to bring the vote home and beat him. But we've allowed other people, other candidates to get in and try to get 2 or 3 people that say they believe or mean the same thing. And all we did was take votes away from somebody that could have ended Cuomo's career. This guy is the real deal. George is absolutely correct. I was just at the Greene County Fair before I came here, and I walked by the Republican booth where we have signs that say leave again.
Well, it's your call. Okay.
And I heard this couple in front of me. That's that guy from Dutchess County.
Uh-oh.
Marc Molinaro. So people are getting the message. But it's going to take each and every one of you to get the message out there. Do you really want to turn this state around? Yeah. Do you just want to talk about it, or do you really want to turn this state around? If you care about this state and you want to stay here and you want to turn this state around, then join me on Election Day and elect Marcus Molinaro our next governor.
he leaves me here. Okay, was you, sir? Thank you, Chris.
Hi, my name is Petros. I got two questions. The first one is just a yes or no.
No, there's no such thing, but go ahead.
I'm going to ask Governor Cuomo for a debate.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So
That's easy, yes.
question number two, are you going to continue the free tuition program?
I don't think there is such a thing as a free tuition.
But
I don't think it works. I don't think it works. And what I want to do is make sure that young people who want to go into secondary education, want to get to college, can get to college. It's not sustainable. I don't think it's a good program, and it also, I think, does hurt people who are struggling, who don't necessarily qualify. And so I would say to you, it's not something that I'd like to see continue. No, I don't know how you sustain it. I just don't. I'd rather make college affordable for everyone. Make it affordable for everyone so that they can earn their way in and achieve success. It's okay. I'll make you a deal. You have all clapped enough. I'm going to say some things that you like or dislike. Feel free to not clap. It's okay. We'll rapid fire. We're going to get through as many as we can. We're going to go 1. Somebody over here had sir, 2, and then 3, and then I'll come back. Okay?
Yeah.
Got it? Go ahead.
On wasted funds, have you done anything, or can you, to keep the Cuomo name off the taps?
Well. Let's just say I hope they don't put up any signs because it'll cost money to take them back down again. Yeah. I don't mean to be rude. There's something. My mom used to joke to me. She said, you may not be modest, but you're humble. I didn't know what she necessarily meant. There's something about humility. You know what I mean? Almost would be one thing if several years from now somebody came out of the woodwork and said, you know what, we should honor Mario Cuomo. But to have a man say, before you adopt this budget, he said it. Before you adopt the budget, you need to do this. That's immodest and without humility. I don't think the bridge should be named for anybody else. I had a perfectly good governor it was dedicated to. I don't think they should be putting up signs. I don't think we should do it that way. Even Mario Cuomo said it. He said, I don't want anything named after me. So I just find it, I find it to be, to lack total humility, and I think it was a mistake that shouldn't occur. Narcissist. Well, that's it sure works. My dad joked though. My father was a great mechanic. My stepdad Skip, great mechanic. He said, "If you want to name a culvert pipe after me, I'll be happy to take it." But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that either. Yeah. Somebody over here, I forget who. Who did I say was coming to you? Okay, good.
Hi, I'm Rick from here at Berne. I got 2 comments. One is about the question about marijuana.
Yeah.
I'm a farmer. I got in touch with those idiots in Albany when they came out and said, we're going to get farmers involved. And he gave the medical marijuana business to 5 of his friends. Never mind the farmers, we'll take care of these guys. Then they came out and they said, we're going to go, I'm sorry, the first one was hemp. The second one was medical marijuana. And you had to put up a $500 buy-in to be considered. So I went up and down the road where I live. I grabbed a hold of 9 other farmers. I said, would you guys be willing to throw in $50? Sure. So I got in touch with the people, and I talked to them, and they said, the guy I was talking to said, don't send the money in yet, wait. Right? A week before the final day of this, I got a phone call. It said, forget about it. They've already been assigned. You're out of it. Everybody else, forget the farmers. This is the kind of stuff that we have to straighten out in the state.
I agree.
And the other thing I was going to mention is, we've got a situation here. Our town supervisor lives on Grand Hollow Road. Grand Hollow comes down to 443. There's a bridge there.
Yeah.
The bridge was closed last year for rebuilding. They finished rebuilding it. It was supposed to be open in September. They had a big problem. It's still not open. And I think it would be a great
town, city, state, who's county bridge?
Down there and have a lot of people show up and let the world know that this guy he's down here in Puerto Rico spending our money, but he can't get our bridge fixed even first. That's a problem.
So I do want to, you brought up a very good point in both comments. Number one, decisions by this administration get made based on political interest, period. I can't point to something that isn't influenced by some political contribution. And by the way, I know everybody who runs for office raises money, but they have made it so offensive and so arrogant. By the way, no human being can honestly raise $31 million for anything unless you've sold yourself for something. I'm sorry, I'm not claiming anything other than that. But we've seen it. It's been on trial. Juries have found it guilty. We've seen what happened. And by the way, it was neither, Michael Grimm was a congressman, not a member of the state legislature. I wanted to make sure I got that. But secondly, it wasn't the governor's campaign manager only. It was his chief, in essence, chief of staff, his top lieutenant in the state government offices calling donors saying, hey, have you contributed yet? I mean, that would be honestly, it'd be like my wife, from her side of the bed, calling some random people and me not knowing about it. I think I'd figure it out sooner or later. She's always on the phone. My point is, don't clap. My point is, come on. They want you to don't believe what you see, believe what I tell you. What we see consistently, Syracuse, Buffalo, Crystal Run, we see people who bought their way to getting and gaining access. And that stinks. It isn't the way it's supposed to be. It isn't. And it's not that we should expect perfection. I am not perfect. But we should expect better. And what you just described is absolutely right. It's like the system is already rigged against you. Already. So whatever it is I do, I promise you this. Now this is third promise, right? Whatever I do is going to be based, as I said, it's boring and governmentally and geeky. It's going to be based on outcomes. What do we want to achieve? Not who gets the benefit. This isn't not what you know, but who you know. This is what you know. I want to know what you know. I want if you're the best person to grow something and we're going to help you, then you get it through open, clear, transparent competition. You get it. I don't get to say my 5 friends benefit. That's not the way government is supposed to work in a democracy. And they've made stop clapping. They have made it so insulting, and it's shameful, and it hurts, and it's stealing from good, decent people too. The state of New York has allowed for the deterioration of infrastructure while we've built a film studio in Syracuse. The state got billions of dollars in court settlements, billions of dollars, one-time revenue. What did this governor do? He used it to pay the credit card. It'd be like, honestly, it's like using, for you, me or you, it's like using your credit card to pay for your mortgage. Some people have no choice but to do that. But government's not supposed to. They took one-time revenue, this sum, billions of dollars, and they're paying to keep the tolls low on the Tappan Zee. It's a fraud that can't be sustained. I feel bad for the next guy. Oh, wait a minute. That money should have gone to infrastructure. Statewide, one-time expenditure. Start building stuff, fixing stuff. There are communities all across the state of New York that have bridges and highways and potholes. You drive through them. I mean, my gosh, you lose your teeth on some of these state highways because we're not effectively investing in infrastructure. Any dollar that we get through a settlement, any one-time revenue that's off budget goes directly to infrastructure. That's it. Because you can use it that way. Put it in the bank account, give it through chips, another way to invest in highway and bridge repair all across the state of New York. It's got an added bonus. One-time investment. 2, puts major investment in infrastructure that's deteriorating. And number 3, it puts people to work, actual real New Yorkers who need to go to work. And so that's what I would do so that we don't have to go, you don't have to protest a bridge repair. Repair the bridge. And so there's not enough money. Not to mention what Albany does is take $1 of money for investment in infrastructure and suck 60 cents out of it for God knows what. I don't even remember some of the anecdotal stuff, but it's like they're putting office chairs in buildings that don't even have people in them with the money that's supposed to go onto your highways. So any dollar, off budget, one-time revenue goes to infrastructure. And the other thing, as I reference CHIPS and I say to the supervisor, I don't need to stand in front of it. The decisions that get made by politicians are, we're going to fix a bridge so I can stand in front of it and you can take a picture. I don't care. If the bridge is repaired, you're probably going to like me. If it's not, you shouldn't like me. I don't need to stand in front of you and say, here's a great big plastic check. I'm going to give it back to you. It's not my money. It's your money. So CHIPS and other mechanisms to get the dollars on the ground, just do it. Let it happen and stay out of the way. Stay out of the way. Fix the bridges. The woman behind you, I am willing to go to 8 o'clock, but that's probably it because my wife would like to see me. But we have a few more minutes. I'll try to keep my answers shorter. Good luck. Yeah.
We did agree to keep ours short. My name's Aunt Margaret. I live on Rat Holiday, way up from that bridge.
Okay, I'll go fix it.
But you don't have to come take your picture to get it fixed.
I don't want it.
I grew up in Orange County, so we're sort of neighbors. My question is, before the last election, Governor Cuomo was down in Monroe at Curious Joe, and he was in Suffolk. And he was down in, and I may have the wrong borough, but I think it's Queens, doesn't matter. How do you fight the Hasidic bloc?
So I'm going to say very clearly, I don't fight anybody. Every vote matters to me. Every vote matters to me. But I don't sell myself for votes. That's all. I don't sell myself for votes.
Thank you.
I wanted. Well, you already asked. Oh, okay. He'll go now, and then I'm back over here. Jeez.
Dennis from East Berne. I got a quick question for you. Can you fix a system that was screwed up as soon as it was done? The lottery. Now it's in the general fund. It's been that way since the inception. If you were arguing that, we'd be in jail.
You know, it's funny. Every time I've ever had a town hall meeting when I was a state legislator, people would say, "Where's all that money from the lottery? And why didn't schools?" And you know what? Every dollar did go into education. It did, but then they took the dollars that were there out, and they used the lottery to supplant money instead of invest. I will say to you that we have to look entirely at how we collect and distribute funding for education, because it needs to get to the people who need it. And so I'm not going to tell you what my outcome is. I'm going to tell you that the process should be defined on ensuring that every child in every school has the ability to achieve success, and then let's create the mechanism to get there. So there's no, my administration, no sacred cows. Everything's on the table. Let's figure out a way to get better outcomes. And that's all I care about. So better outcomes, lower taxes. I don't know if we can fix the lottery, but if you have the ability to win it, I'm more than happy to call you a friend. Yeah. Yes, sir.
My name's Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry. If it's broken, we'll fix it. Go ahead.
Dave from Wilton, New York.
Dave.
We spend more per capita on education than any other state in the country by a fair amount. Do you believe we spend too much, too little, or the right amount on education?
We spend, totally we spend too much and we waste too much. It's because, and I would offer to you, because we're very top-heavy education system. It's not about cheating kids. It's not. If spending more money resulted in better outcomes, I would have a conversation with you about that. But what we've learned in this state is that the bureaucracy of Albany and of the state government cheats kids from those resources, cheats teachers from those resources. I mean, there's really no reason a school teacher should have to dig deep into their pockets to buy what they need to have a good class experience for kids. There's no reason why we should be educating kids to take tests, as I said, but rather trying to inspire them to learn. So at the end of the day, I want the system to work, and I think it can work for less. I think we can get more for much less, and that's what I want. Focus on the outcomes for the kids. Focus on encouraging great teachers. Empower districts and communities and families, and I won't go through my entire education speech from before, but that's what we should be focused on, the outcomes. And by the way, if there are kids that are living in districts that are failing or unsafe, those are the ones that need our help. They need our help. So I think the system wastes too much. It is too bureaucratic. It is too Albany-centered, and we can get more, much, much more for less. Oh. I'm going to go right over here because she looks more pleasant than you. Unless you'd like to yield. You're next. 1 and 2. Gotcha. Go ahead.
You just mentioned public schools failing and what we can do to make it better for everyone to know your outlook on schools of choice in terms of
Yeah, I'm an all of the above kind of person. I am. I don't want to steal from failing schools, so I want to be sure that options exist. So I'm okay with charter and private school options. I'm okay with homeschool, and I think that some resources need to follow the student. I do believe in that, but I don't want to leave a school district unable to provide service. So again, it's about outcomes. And if a family in a struggling district, in an inner city, anywhere in the state, or some community across the state wants choice, then I think we ought to give them that opportunity. But at the same time, I want our public schools to be great. I want them to be cathedrals of great educational opportunity. But at the same time, I do believe in providing opportunity and choice to people. I do. Yes, sir.
How do you do? My name's Douglas. I've come from about 2 hours west of here.
Oh, gee,
I spent an entire day formulating my question for you.
Okay.
You've already touched on a lot of the points, so I'm going to try to modify my question a little bit, but I'm extremely concerned about our rights under the United States Constitution.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about the abuses in the last 30 or 40 years in the entire country, as well as the United States. And a couple points that are very much an infringement on our rights as citizens is the SAFE Act and also this nationalized health care. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say anything about the people have to fund health care and pay their own money for it. The government has overreached on that completely. But another threat has reared its ugly head lately, and you've probably heard of it, something called, the nickname, the red flag law, which is an extreme risk protection order, and it's already been passed and it's in use in Washington State. And basically what it is, it's an infringement. The proposed law would use the hearsay of one citizen to deny another citizen their rights as guaranteed by that Constitution without a crime ever being committed. And what I mean is, it would deny the 14th Amendment, citizens' right of due process. It would forsake the Fourth Amendment, our guaranteed right of freedom from search and seizure. And basically what it is it's the hearsay of one citizen accusing another one to have their firearms removed from them by the authorities on the false pretenses, perhaps, that the person is either endangering themselves or endangering others. Therefore, and I work for a school, but it would be, I'll paint a picture. A school nurse feels that a child in the school is living in a dangerous environment. They've heard rumors that the parent or guardian has firearms in the home and they're unsafe. So they call the police department. That word goes to a judge. The judge makes a decision right then and there that he puts an order out so that the police go to that person's home without any due process and tell the guy or person, we're here to take your firearms away from you. All of those things are serious, serious infringements on our rights as citizens. That to me smacks of the USSR, Soviet Russia. Knock on your door, stick a gun in your nose and take your belongings from you.
Lock and load.
Oh, no, let's not do it.
Well, that's right.
Okay.
But
Thanks, okay.
they've already done this in Washington State. I watched a video the other night of a guy that probably is a little bit borderline. He's a drinker and he owns some firearms. But he never broke any laws at all. And they went on the hearsay of the guy's neighbors because they accused him of being scary or dangerous. So the police arrived at his house and they took his guns from him. Even the police thought it was crazy.
I kind of hear where you're going. Why don't we...
I'd like to know where you would stand on such a law if it came upon your desk. Would you sign such a law as that, or would you stand up for the Constitution?
I would stand up for the Constitution and the rights of people. That's my position.
I would like to give you a gift.
Oh, I have this.
It's got my note in there, and this is for your own use.
I want you to know you just scared the hell out of him.
Okay. This will fit right in your pocket.
I have one, and I'll add it to it. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Right in your pocket, and I wanted you to have this.
Yeah. I'm going to do the supervisor. It is 5 minutes to 8, and so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. In the black shirt. 1, 2, 3. I know who you are. 1, 2, 3. And then if you don't mind, I think we'll stop, but I'll be happy to kind of hang around a little bit, okay? But it's been almost 2 hours, and you've got to be tired of listening to me. Go ahead.
I'm Sean.
I guessed it, Sean.
My question is regarding veterans and the fact that 22 a day are reported committing suicide.
Yeah.
How is you, Governor, how would you help combat that in New York?
How deal with veterans, just so you know, if you have veterans dealing in particular with what we'll say are mental health issues, whether it's post-traumatic stress related or other mental health issues, similarly to what I've done in Dutchess, and I think the state needs to do statewide. I think every county needs a Veterans Resource Center, a facility someplace where veterans in a non-threatening environment, in particular, it's different. I hate this. I always give long answers. But you know, when folks came home from World War II or from Korea, or even to some extent from Vietnam, they found their way to the VFW or to the American Legion, and it became sort of this social collective that kind of worked together, right? Well, we know that those institutions don't have the same membership they once had, and people just don't function that way anymore, right? You come home, you get on social media or whatever, you're not necessarily going to the club. But there needs to be an avenue for those dealing with mental health concerns to, in their own way, begin to confront that. In my county, Dutchess Community College is a Veterans Resource Center. It allows folks to walk in just in their, I mean, it's anything veterans related. You just walk onto campus, you can get some help. It could be access to education, it could be access to job, it could be mental health issues. We also, thanks to Senator Amador and others, have launched in our county, we need to do this statewide, make sure every county has the program, is peer-to-peer counseling. Veterans in particular are proud, right? And understandably so. And some don't want to necessarily find their way to the mental health facility to get help. We need to be sure that every community has that peer-to-peer counseling opportunity so that veterans, other veterans dealing with similar issues talk to one another. Very important. We know that it's very effective. The other is we need effective relationships. So in New York State, counties are responsible for doing veteran outreach. There needs to be a much stronger network between what the counties are doing with what hospitals and emergency rooms and trauma centers see, what the VA knows when a veteran comes back into the community, to make sure we don't lose anybody. And then lastly, I will tell you that we need an effective effort to identify those who are perhaps homeless, living with mental health issues, to be identified. No veteran should be living on the streets, period. No veteran should be living on the streets, period. And create then housing opportunities, workforce, create the opportunity to, in a careful way. Again, you're dealing with people who have earned the right to be proud, whether they think so or not, to be able to easily access the services and support necessary in a way that deals with their concern and deals with their issue. But again, I want to return to where I talked about mental health. We've got to confront the stigma associated with it. So, you know, there is some need for family members to acknowledge there's a problem here. I want it, and I'm not discrediting that. So come forward and provide the help. Give family and friends the tools necessary to help one another. We cannot be innocent bystanders while we watch another in our life spiral out of control or act out in a violent way against themselves or others. Every life has value, and it's important. It's incumbent upon all of us to be more caring in that way. And we spend, yes, that's right. And every time we pick up we have a conversation, and I say this respectful of politicians who rush to the microphone, we always talk about the last day. Do you know what I mean? When there's a crisis, we always talk about the last day, the day the individual took their life, the day the individual overdosed, the day the individual acted out in a violent way. We don't talk about the first day. What was it that got them to the point where they thought they needed to do this? And if we talk more about the first day, we can avert and prevent people from taking their lives and taking others. That's what we should be focused on, and helping people get the help that they need, okay? I said number 2 and then number 3, and you're cut off. No speeches.
Thanks for coming out, Mr. Molinaro.
Mark. My name is Mark.
Mark, real quick, I just throw a couple numbers out, target numbers on what you plan on doing with the state's budget.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Cut it. I've said this to people, and I've done this in county government. When I inherited that deficit, that budget gap, everybody said to me, oh, if you cut this and cut that, we won't have any great services. I said, well, what does that mean? Well, we're an A+ community. I said, well, do you think when I cut 10% we'll be at a D, a C, a B? What I found was we went from A+, A++ to A+. Nobody knew. When we were able to wring out the efficiencies, the savings that I needed to get out of county government, I've told this story. I'm sorry to do this. I told the story. We did everything. The county executive, under the county charter, is required to sign every contract the county enters into, 1,200 contracts a year. Since 1967, the county executive signed 5 original contracts for every contract. Do you know why? I have yet to find anybody who knows. So I said, why do we do that? Well, because we always have done that. Famous last words in my administration. That's the way we've always done it. Okay, we're not doing it anymore. That alone, no more 5 contracts, just sign 1. Saved us $38,000 in paper. And then we know it, right? I mean, now that's not a huge amount of money, but that's a whole salary. That's somebody's job, $38,000. So my point is, I don't make decisions based on how much we should spend. I make decisions based on what's the outcome. What are we trying to achieve? And I will shrink the size of state government, and we will get a better outcome. I want to hold the line on spending and cut the state budget. Cut it.
You must have a target number on cutting, all right?
Well, billions. Well, I think you and I, listen, I know you want me to say that. So I will come into office and not increase spending. We will zero out states. We will not increase state spending with the goal of not increasing. What this governor does is somewhere between 2% and 5% annually. I want to get to a point where we're able to reduce state spending 2% so we can drive down property taxation and taxation. And we'll get there. We'll get there by creating efficiencies, modernizing state government, getting a better deal for what you spend money on. Not by cutting people. No, it wasn't. But you're talking to me. I know. They always say to me, I use too many words. But this is complex. I want to get the outcome. And the outcome needs to be cutting spending to get a better outcome. So yes, year 1, I will not produce a budget that increases spending, and we'll move toward total reductions of 2% a year to the extent we can produce it. I promised the gentleman in the back the opportunity. The gentleman in the back, that guy over there. Go ahead, sir. How far did you drive?
About 3 hours, sir.
What is the matter with these?
I just wanted to ask, Mr. Molinaro, sir, in regards to the New York State Sheriffs.
Yeah.
I'm Sheriff Carter from Williams County. I know I spoke to you before, but I can't go down there tonight because I want to meet you. So I just wanted to say that, sir, after listening to you again here tonight, I truly believe in you, sir.
Thank you.
And that I just wanted to ask you, while I could, is this governor currently we have has no respect for New York State Sheriffs. Every time he asks for a meeting in his group, he usually tries to bring himself to bring it to as one. When you become governor, sir, would you be open to meeting with New York State Sheriffs?
Open? Are you having a barbecue? Because I'll come. So let me, that was a long drive for a short question, and the shortest answer I've given tonight, except to this gentleman, I said yes, I'd debate. I know you're going to close, so let me say this to your point, and this is where I've always started and I will always end. We have to respect each other. And in government, that requires elected officials to respect others. When a lot of the towns and villages across the state criticize this governor for saying, well, you're the reason property taxes are so high, you should fix it. And they say, no, wait a minute, what about you? You know what his response was? They're full of baloney. That's a direct quote. They're full of baloney. Now, I don't know much about baloney, but I'm pretty sure they weren't full of it. My point is this, and I mean this sincerely. If we're going to solve problems, you've got to respect one another. You've got to listen to one another. And we've got to find some commonality. And what this governor has consistently done is when he's done with you, he divorces you and kicks you to the side. And that's why he's being criticized on the left. I mean, if George were still here, they'd tell you, right? He worked with the Senate majority. When he was done with them, cast them aside, move on. When he doesn't like, and I was with some members of Congress the other day, when he didn't like their response on tax bills, he didn't say, gee, I wish you would come a different way, or I'll have to deal with them. He threatened them. He threatened them. They openly say that he threatened them. What do we live in? Where are we living? And if the governor doesn't like it, shame on him. That's not the way you govern. It isn't. So to your point, and I promise you this, you're not always going to like the conclusion of my decision making. We can't always expect that. But I promise you, I will never disrespect people who are honest and earnest about their beliefs, their opinions, their concerns. Never. No matter where they come from, no matter who they are, no matter how long they've lived here. Because if we're going to get to solutions, we've got to start by respecting one another and respecting ourselves. And I do think in the state of New York, what we need now more than ever is a government and a governor who will listen and will try to bring people together to solve very, very important issues in a way that's respectful to one another. That's my commitment to you. I'm glad you were here tonight. If you have more questions, feel free to email us or call us. You can find us on social media, whatever those are. I don't even know.
Thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be here, and I will be back. Thanks.